Right, welcome to News Sources. Today I'm joined by Roslyn Obala, who's a senior political journalist here at Standard Group, and by Ramadan Rajab, who's also a journalist. Today we're also expecting Betty Waitherero, who is a political strategist, and of course Ibrahim Oruko, who is also a journalist. But before we start, rather as we start, ladies and gentlemen, what do you make of the heckling of Ruto there, and at the end of that clip that we saw, Uhuru kind of saying, if you don't want to vote for me, then that's your fault. Rosen, I think I'll start with you.
I think because we are heading to the last stretch of the campaigns, and everybody's putting their foot forward, and I think it is very honorable of the president to try and just make inroads in opposition strongholds. And I think this is expected. Remember, this is a place that voted for the NASA flag bearer, and that is his home turf. But I think coming from the crowd rejecting the openness, I think we shouldn't be going there demonstrating that we don't tolerate different views, because what we are seeing, we saw NASA presidential candidate go to Kiambu, yes, and we didn't expect this. He has been going to Meru and Tharakanithi, and we expected the same to be extended to other areas, because you're free to come, listen, but the choice is yours on who to vote for.
Isn't it also a choice to jeer or not to jeer, so to speak? Is it freedom of expression?
Personally, there are two ways to looking at this. One is either it's political immaturity, where people just don't want, and secondly, it's a freedom of expression. This is the only chance you have this person. You can't go to his office and demonstrate or tell him or jeer him down. He's now at your backyard in a rally. So sometimes if you're satisfied with these politicians, that's the only way to express your opinion. Sometimes others express dissatisfaction by walking out. Others will jeer him down. And this rally, they were already the president there. Maybe they wanted to listen to the president and other speakers, so they will not walk out. So the only way to tell them, we don't want to listen to a certain speaker. But there are two ways to look at it. You can't condemn it, and you can't really say put an order on it, because you never even know the motivation that really made them to jeer the deputy president.
That's true, but Roslyn, as a political journalist, does this have any bearing on William Ruto's political future? Because this is not the first time he's being jeered or booed.
Yeah, I think it has a bit of bearing. We can't say per se that because the people of Kisumu did not want to listen to him, he has lost the ground, because the places he has gone to, he has received the same resistance. But generally, these are people who support Jubilee. So the fact that they don't want to listen to the deputy president, and remember, they are one pact with the president. When you go to the ballot, you vote for the president, and he's part and parcel of the presidency. So I think going towards 2022, it's something he needs to worry about. He needs to worry about, because when he speaks, he talks about unifying the country, bringing the people together, and we see that there are places where he feels that resentment. Like people have unsettled business with him. I think he needs to go back to the drawing board, pull aside his political advisors, and just try to trace his roots. Where did the rain start beating him?
Right, but in this on this particular occasion, he was jeered in Nyanza. He's also been booed and jeered in Baringo, which some would say is his backyard. So, Ramadan, same question. Do you think this has anything to do with long-term politics?
I think this political communication, the public had just communicated to him. This is not the first time. He had resistance, even in western region. He had resistance in parts of Isiolo. He had these issues. So, it's political communication. People are telling him, maybe your approach to politics, or you're disrespecting us, so this is the only way we tell you off. Maybe they are communicating to him. You never know.
Maybe they are communicating. Well, they probably are. But you talked about maturing as a democracy and coming to a place where you exchange views, not necessarily blows or insults. But that has been the nature of the election, Roslyn. It's been very fractious in terms of people feeling free to tell the opposing side, either side, what they feel and what they think. Is it any surprise that it's now trickled down to the electorate?
I don't think it's a surprise, because these are things we see, especially during rallies and all that, because just as Ramajan said, this is the only opportunity they have to actually put across their disgruntlement. Maybe they're not happy with the way he addresses other leaders. And sometimes it's a stance you take that people are not happy with, because we've seen all over he goes, people are more receptive to the president, but people tend to be very angry with him. That's why I was saying he really needs to go back and look at himself and just re-examine himself. Is it his kind of politics? Is it the way he communicates? Is it his ideologies? Is it his stance? There must be something that actually irritates the public to be very angry towards him. And we've seen also even the way he responds to them. Like, it's not a must, you know, if it is the president, vote for the president. But knowing back in his mind that him and the president are the one and the same thing.
The one thing. But also, he was being booed. Uhuru was on stage. Our president was on stage at the point when people were screaming, "We don't want Ruto." So that was a disrespect to him as well.
But they were treating him them as a package. So when you remember,
how a package when they're doing one and not the other?
When this rally was being organized, I had sentiments from leaders saying the president should come alone. Don't come here with Ruto. And now he went just to prove a point, saying I will come. But you know, this political communication, sometimes politicians need to learn and say, I can learn from this.
Well, let's see if another crowd has learned from this, because a NASA rally in Kabarnet, Baringo County, turned chaotic after a section of the youth heckled the speakers and interrupted the rally. Leaders led by Raila Odinga were forced to cut short the rally and head to Eldama Ravine town. The youth disrupted the rally, saying that they were doing so because the president was disrespected in Kisumu.
Raila alienda Central na akapokelewa. Mbona rais ameenda leo Kisumu akapigiwa makelele? Ndio unaona watu wa Baringo hawakufurahia.
Well, before we discuss this, let me just introduce my guest, Betty Waitherero, political strategist who just joined us, and of course, Ibrahim Oruko, who is also a journalist. Welcome, guys. I know the traffic was a bit nonsensical today, but we're happy to have you. We were just discussing heckling at political rallies. We started with Uhuru in Nyanza and now Raila in Baringo. So I think I'll start with you, Oruko. Is this thing deep? Is there any ideology or real sentiment to these booings, or it's just tit for tat? You booed my guy, I'm going to boo your guy.
Yeah, it's an ideology. Even hate is an ideology. So ideology doesn't need to be something constructive.
Okay.
It's also deconstructive. So as I always argue, these are the usual things that happen. This is the nature of our politics, and I don't think that we should read so much on it. I have heard the guy say it was a reaction. In Baringo, it was a reaction. So yes, it's tit for tat.
Betty, tit for tat, or there's some depth to this?
I don't think there's any depth to it. I think that next week you'll find Raila going to Baringo and they'll cheer him. And he's been there a number of times over the past few years, and you've seen the sort of reactions he gets. Actually, when you look at these rallies, you really can't gauge the sort of voter turnout that will come from either party. The same sort of crowd turns up in red and then the next day in orange. So you're left wondering, how do we gauge is this a stronghold for you? Do we gauge it by t-shirts? We can't really tell. So a little bit of heckling won't hurt. Although I think that if it escalates into violence, which we have seen happen before, then now we have to ask the leaders themselves to just tell their supporters, you know what, tone it down.
Yeah. Could we link this to the whole independent movement? Are Kenyan voters also feeling independent? Whereas they will take your money, they'll take your t-shirts, they'll take your cap, but they will still boo you when you come to your backyard. Are we seeing some sort of maturing, perhaps, of the Kenyan electorate?
I don't think we can say that it's about maturity per se, because remember, our leaders have they have their mobilizers on the ground. So if I'm NASA and I'm going to a place where I need a crowd, they will obviously mobilize people. But remember, in this crowd, we also have supporters of Jubilee. But you can't control a crowd. So whatever they do when they're in that crowd, you can't actually pinpoint and say that these are our supporters, these are Jubilee supporters. And just like Betty says, I'll just put on a red t-shirt and I become Jubilee supporter for the sake of getting what I will get at that particular rally, and just turn that t-shirt again and put on an orange one and go for NASA rally. So that's why it is very difficult to cut across and know in these particular elections, are we having a solid NASA support or a solid Jubilee support?
Okay, maybe just going back to 2013. Were there similar scenes, Rajab? Were we seeing a similar type of politics, which is kind of very confrontational, or is this a new thing?
I think even 2013, media was the one which was not showing these images. But things were happening, the confrontations were happening. But looking at the heckling and jeering, I think for me, it's one way of people expressing themselves. To politicians, there's nothing that hurts a politician like a crowd with jeering him. That's the only time they get agitated. But when they get a calm crowd, they say, this is our votes. But I hold an ideology that nowadays, crowds don't translate to votes. And they're not voters anyway. Because this crowd will be, they do what I'll term prostitution. They'll follow this politician today, the following day, the other one. Because to them, one, they're excited, they just want to see the man. Is this really the president? Secondly, maybe they want a t-shirt. Thirdly, I see some just committing electoral offenses by handing out cash, 500. So attending a rally, you will get 500 which you didn't have in your pocket. And the public will come.
What about the heckling? Are you given 500 also to heckle, Oruko?
Yeah, like for this specific one, if you hear this, the intention,
your name has become Oruko.
No. But the intention of this, they say, we heckled because the president was also heckled in Kisumu. So meaning there must be some organization somewhere that really triggered it. They didn't do it out from their heart. Because they were at the rally, how do they know?
So are we saying that they have no capacity to think on their own terms and decide for themselves?
But I've said it.
Oruko, are you saying that as well?
I think it's right. What's wrong with that? Because
what is wrong with that?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. We have a population that is, a youth that is largely idle. So 100 shilling means a lot. A t-shirt may just be a red thing, but it means a lot. It's much more than a political messaging platform. It could be as well as a Sunday best. So you cannot miss out and go get it. But you see, let us see, even in terms of reporting, if Uhuru goes to Kisumu, what will the media say? Uhuru raids Raila's home turf, Raila to their route. So those things sort of create some sort of, I don't know how to put
environment,
it.
Maybe.
Yeah, to try to encourage people to show that we still remain the kings here.
Right.
And there's nothing as good as heckling your opponent because you weaken him.
Like Rajab says, you make him feel really bad. There's nothing else. Right, let's switch gears here and move on to Uhuru Kenyatta, who has warned the IEBC, NASA and the judiciary not to mess with the dates of the upcoming elections. He has warned the most serious consequences if they change the election date from August 8th. In a rejoinder, Orange Democratic Movement leaders have told President Uhuru Kenyatta to accept whatever outcome the courts give. The leaders argue that it is the courts that made him president in 2013 after the disputed election results.
Nataka niwaambie wenye koti, tumewaheshimu, lakini msifikirie heshima ni uoga. Na sisi hatutakubali wenzetu watumie makoti na kuintimidate IEBC wakifikiria ya kwamba watashinda kupitia mlango ya nyuma. Hakuna kitu kama hicho.
President Uhuru should not make the mistake of thinking that we in ODM were interested in tenders. ODM has said in its manifesto that the leaders within ODM and in NASA will not engage in any government business.
Right, Oruko, let's start with you. What do you make of the president's comments? Does he have any kind of right to interfere with the independence of the judiciary?
Honestly, when I heard him say that, on this matter is just an ordinary citizen anyway. His opinion just ends there. But I'm only concerned about the threats that he seemed to be throwing around judges. In my view, it was a political scheme, maybe to slow down a judiciary that is increasingly becoming very, very tough, protecting its staff. And he knows how he has benefited from that kind of a weak judiciary, and he's scared. He's a beneficiary of a weak judiciary, and he's scared of a strong judiciary. And it has been a very tough, because the two verdicts he gave. In fact, I cannot even understand why he's talking what he's talking about, because he has lost fair and square. This is one of the best, the ruling on Tarling was probably one of the best rulings one can ever read, because it portrayed IBC in a very bad light, and his government, more so his Attorney General, in a very bad light, as people who do not know what they're doing.
So in your opinion, it was a very fair ruling?
No, not my opinion. The opinion of the court. It's a ruling that was delivered by judges, 5 of them.
Okay, your reasoning for it being fair?
Yes, I'm only quoting what the judges were saying. They were even wondering how this matter came before this court. You have an Attorney General. So I don't know why he's reacting, but obviously times are very bad for the president, so you can understand him.
Yeah, we can understand it's campaign season. I mean, tempers are flaring and people are a bit sensitive, Betty. But what do you make of Uhuru Kenyatta's comments there about the judiciary?
In many ways, he seems frightened. I hate to use that word.
Like Oruko says.
Yeah, it does. Because you see, and I'll say this, anger at this point is an expression of some sort of fear. You're afraid that and he's saying it actually, that he's afraid that the courts might be manipulated by his rivals. And they might interfere with the IBC, but there's nothing to justify this fear. There's something that Oruko has said that made me think about it. He has spent 3-4 years strengthening institutions, and to his credit, he said, Kenya is in a better place, and we agree to a certain degree. But now all of a sudden you're turning around and trying to weaken the same institutions through your utterances, through your threats. It makes you question, okay, how seriously do you take your role as executive? Do you understand that you cannot do this at this stage in the election? Your threats themselves are bringing a lot of antagonism it's unnecessary, by the way, into the equation. And you're making us all question, okay, will this be a fair scenario if you're saying, and you can quote him, we will not take this
lying down, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah, so you're left wondering, okay, well, you won't accept, but you ask the opposition to accept. There has to be some fairness to the thing. I'd say that yes, okay, you're speaking as a citizen, you're concerned, but the way you voice your concerns make us worry that you might use your position.
Is he speaking as a citizen? Was he speaking in his capacity as a citizen, or the president of Kenya?
Of course, the line is blurred.
But ideally,
just to clarify.
Ideally, when you see the president speak, he sought to respect the constitution. An attack on the judiciary is just an attempt to subvert the constitution, because this script has been written for some time. Any institution that seems to be tough and really doing its work, the president has been so uneasy with it. Take an example of the Auditor General's office. He wants weak institutions which can be easily manipulated by state machinery, like you have a weak CID, you have a weak IPOA. Those are the institutions friendly to him. That's what he wants. Those ones that can play ball.
Well, the problem here is the rhetoric has always been, like Betty says, that we're strengthening institutions. When something goes wrong, the first thing is go to court if you're dissatisfied, Rosalind. So this seems like a complete about turn from what we've been hearing the past 4 years.
In fact, from where I see it, I think Jubilee is speaking for IBC, which is also an independent institution, because the 2 cases were filed by IBC, not Jubilee, both for the tallying and the printing of the ballot papers.
Right.
And remember, the ballot papers case did not start yesterday. It's a case that has been there since December last year, when CORD had not even merged to become NASA. So I think we are losing the debate here. It's like IBC has sat down and let Jubilee to speak for it.
Right.
So I think the real issue here should be Jubilee talking to the judiciary, but us seeing IBC coming out and talking about the pipelines, which again they slept on the job
as an independent entity.
Yes, they had the time, so they shouldn't say that NASA is pushing them to the wall.
Right. Well, sticking with that topic tonight, our Twitter poll question is indeed, should President Uhuru Kenyatta interfere with the independence of the judiciary? Should President Uhuru Kenyatta interfere with the independence of the judiciary? You can tweet me at Julie Masiga, at KTN News. Of course, the hashtag is news sources. Right now, we're going for a quick break. Please do not go too far.